Welcome to this edition of the Mayor's Report for Pleasanton. I'm your host, Splen Splendorio. Joining me today is Vice Mayor Jeff Nybert, of course, from the beautiful city of Pleasanton. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Splend. I'm glad to be here.
Well, this is your first time, and we're excited to have you.
Well, it's going to be an adventure for me as well, so
all right. Well,
we'll go through it.
We typically start off the show with topics that you'd like to talk about. We call it Mayor's Report, Mayor's Choice, or in this case, Vice Mayor's Choice. What have you got to share with our viewers?
Well, being April, this is the month for Earth Day, and the city just had an Earth Day celebration, which drew an estimated 300 to 400 people throughout the day. So it was a good way to celebrate the environment, learn simple, meaningful ways to maybe be more sustainable at home, be a better environmental steward, recycle more, something for everyone. They had gardening kits and free giveaways, live performances, and story time for the kids. And one of the most talked about things was the blender bike.
What's a blender bike, Jeff?
It's actually a pedal-powered blender that you can use to make smoothies, for example. I saw one time outside a Jimmy Buffett concert, so kind of apropos, but this one was used for making
Well, they were
smoothies.
making margaritas in
They
that
were making
one.
margaritas for Jimmy Buffett, yes. And this was smoothies, and it was a good way to, you have smoothies and sustainability at the same time and have fun. Clean energy. So a major highlight also was the Happy Birds performance.
Okay, tell us about the Happy Birds.
Okay, those are parrots. And Happy Birds are a group that's, I think, born in the Bay Area, and you've seen parrot performances where they ride bikes and ride scooters and do tricks, that kind of thing. And so that was delightful for kids and adults alike. And a reminder also of the fact parrots come from the tropics, from rainforest, and so a focus on preserving their habitat as well. We also had our landscape architecture team gave away free trees to people to plant in their backyards. And in addition to that, there was a plant exchange, and people could bring in plants from their home and trade them with other people who brought plants, and that way have new plants and diversify their landscape perhaps. We had organizations and local sustainability groups there as well, with booths to provide information and resources. And the day kicked off with a shredding event. So people could bring boxes of their sensitive documents, have them shredded on site, and then divert that paper from the landfill, so toward recycling. So fun and learning and community spirit is what it was all about. And so a good way to demonstrate Pleasanton's environmental stewardship.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Last several shows, and this has been a big issue for Pleasanton, is a budget process.
Yeah.
Right. Give us an update and next steps, what's coming up that our viewers should know about.
Okay, sure. So where are we now? The city's looking at an annual $10 to $12 million gap in our general fund budget over the next 2 years. And general fund is differentiated from enterprise funds like water and sewer. So the shortfall did not happen overnight. It's been building up for years, and the expectation is for a $13 million annual shortfall each year for the next 8 years. And that's if economic times stay as they are now. In the event of a downturn, it would be even worse. So the city's been tightening its belts by putting off maintenance on things like parks, facilities, roads, the pool. So we're now at a point where deeper cuts have to be made, of course. And what we're focused on, earlier in the year, the City Council gave clear priorities to staff as to how to approach the budget process. And that included protecting essential services like public safety, parks, and programs for youth and seniors. It included making sure that community engagement and equity are maintained, that no one population or area of the city suffers more than others, as well as keeping long-term financial health front and center, because we have to get there at some point. So, and as well, looking for ways to grow our revenue through economic development. So what's been happening?
Okay.
The last 2 meetings that the council had early in April were to address the budget concerns. About 125 people attended, and 75 gave public comments. And that first meeting dragged on for 7 hours, but there was a lot to cover. Public comment alone took 2.5 hours. So that's a good thing to have that kind of community engagement and discussion. It helps shape the conversation. So during that meeting and the next one, the City Council focused on each proposed reduction in detail, so they could understand the impact upon the community and the cost savings completely. So what's being proposed? City Council directed staff to make around $6.5 million of cuts the first year and around $7 million the second year. Most of the reductions are in internal services, recreation and library programs, and maintenance of parks and facilities. There's smaller cuts also to things like police and fire, to planning and building, and community services. And those particular areas, the council and staff worked hard to protect as much as possible. City Council also directed staff to use up to $2 million in interest from the city's pension trust fund. So staff is working on a plan now to close that gap, about $1.5 million more in year one and $2.7 million more in year two. Okay, so infrastructure. There's a lot to be said.
Well, let's stop for a second.
Sure.
So you said it's about $13 million. Mm-hmm. So I heard 7-ish in 1 year. Is it over 2 years, 13 million, or is it annually 13 million?
Or the average over the next 8 years is annually.
Annually, okay.
$13 million.
So
yes.
these cuts you're talking about, would they bridge the deficit, or with the additional $2 million, or is there more discussion to occur in order for at least the first couple of years to address the deficit?
Yeah, so there's more discussion. The staff is scheduled to present the draft budget to City Council on May 20th. So the cuts that we made, plus the use of pension trust fund money, still leaves a gap each year, and staff is looking at ways to narrow that gap. The difficult thing is that since it's a structural budget deficit, things like insurance premiums, which cost a lot of money, they go up year after year after year. So
right.
They're never coming down, they're always growing.
Right.
And there are a number of things in the budget like that, which is basically causing the situation that we're in.
Well, it's salaries. I mean,
salaries, yeah, payroll goes up.
The payroll goes up. Yeah.
Contracts, things like that. And the forecast of $13 million is actually a, like I said, based on current economic outlook. But if there's a recession or an economic downturn, it gets even worse. The analysis showed up to $22 million possibly in an annual deficit.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeff. That helped. I think that helps. I mean, I was curious too, and I'm sure our viewers are. Let's talk about the capital or infrastructure.
Okay.
What's going on with that budget?
Sure. Yeah. We've identified over $53 million in needed capital projects. Of course, there's a long list of capital projects that are being carried forward, but the prioritized capital projects include the critical ones like the West Las Positas Boulevard reconstruction, bike and pedestrian safety projects across I-580, and park and trail improvements, and stormwater repairs. Because you may recall from the storm several years ago, the stormwater system did not perform as it was expected to.
Right.
So we're also shifting $2 million to address urgent deferred maintenance, like patching the pool at the Aquatic Center. Fire Station 2 is in need of some urgent repairs. I've been in it. I know from the inside what it's like, and it really needs it. And the synthetic turf at Bernal Park is worn out and needs to be replaced. So you might ask, what's coming next? So
well,
I did mention.
Let me dig in a little bit about some of the capital improvement projects. Sounds to me like you're prioritizing those that are the most needy, that also the community most relies upon. Right?
Yes,
okay. That
exactly.
Makes, right. I mean, obviously, you don't want water systems to fail or sewer to fail, and you want the pool not to leak and the turf not. Yeah, those all make those. So that seems like a wise place to start when you have a bunch of difficult decisions.
Yes, exactly, and that's the upcoming meeting on the 20th of May, we'll talk about that in further detail. But things like the capital projects that we just mentioned are really crucial because Pleasanton has been a city now for about, well, a lot of projects when Pleasanton started growing fast in the 80s were constructed then. So now those are 40 to 50 years old,
right,
and starting to fail. We've had water main breaks under the streets in several locations recently. So things like that, and the city has developed an asset management plan under the leadership of the city manager, and that will be finalized later this year. And so we finally will have our hands around the total ball of wax, you might say, of everything that needs to be done. But we already know these critical infrastructure items, they will fail, and in many cases, the condition is such that it'll be sooner rather than later.
All right, Jeff, let's finish up with what's coming next.
Okay. Next is, I mentioned the draft 2-year budget, includes both the operating budget and the and capital projects, is due to be presented to the City Council on May 20th. And then the final budget is expected to be adopted on June 17th at the council meeting that day. So there's more information on the city's website about all of this and many more details. So cityofpleasantonca.gov.
And I must commend you, but it's you come in. This is your decision maker, and it's always tough to figure out how to cut a budget, isn't it?
It is, yes, and certainly not what I was expecting really when I took the position. But here we are, and we just have to make the best of the situation, and each of us acting together as a council do what's best for the city.
Great, that's great. Thank you very much for saying that, Jeff. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back at this edition of the Mayor's Report for Pleasanton in a moment. Welcome back to this edition of the Mayor's Report for Pleasanton. We are here talking with Vice Mayor Jeff Nybert. Welcome back, Jeff.
Thank you, Splendid.
Well, thank you for all that information about the budget. Now let's talk about something pretty heady and big that's impacting all our lives. Mm-hmm. We've seen a lot of gyrations in the federal government. Let's get down to how it affects all of us who live and work in Pleasanton. All those rapid changes, how's it affecting your city?
Well, it's gyrations is a good term to use because it's affecting Pleasanton as well as many other cities, and so we're keeping a close eye, on what's happening in Washington D.C. by working with our cities who are partners with us in the Tri-Valley, with a representation in Washington who keeps an eye out on what's going on there, meets with representatives. But with so many proposed changes to the funding, from all the programs, federal agency, you name it, it's really hard to keep track of how everything's going to shake out. But we're trying to prepare. Taking proactive steps to strengthen Pleasanton's financial foundation, and the budget is part of that, going toward long-term fiscal stability. But we want to be able to weather economic uncertainty, whether it comes from DC or from anywhere else. And one example of immediate impact that we've had is in cybersecurity. You might remember a couple years ago hearing about all kinds of cities that were undergoing ransom attacks where criminals would take over their computer systems and gain access, demand ransom. Well, Pleasanton, of course, guards against that as well with our cybersecurity. But an immediate impact was that federal cuts to the agency, I think it's called Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Those cuts have led to the cancellation of training and exercises that our staff had been scheduled to take part in. So now we're exploring partnerships to help fill that gap, but federal support is key to staying ahead of cybersecurity threats, all over the country because, they have the intelligence and are able to gather it. Another example is the library. Because of cuts to the Library Services and Technology Act, those cuts will likely affect services that we currently rely on, like Link Plus, where we get materials from other libraries, statewide digital subscriptions like New York Times, and support for high-speed internet access in the libraries. Our adult literacy and English as a second language programs will continue, but that's thanks to state funding, not federal. But we do expect to lose key support services like staff training, resource subscriptions, access to professional development, for the team. So, like I said, what are we doing to adapt?
Well, yeah, it seems like you have to have contingency plans also, right? If you don't get it, if you do get it, I mean, it's sort of a different way of thinking.
It is, yeah. In the past, you could really count on that kind of support from the federal government as well as state government. Grants, of course, are things that the city is looking at and applying for all the time, and actually receiving quite a few of them. And the possibility exists that some of those could be cut off or clawed back. So, federal support is very critical for the city. So we're hopeful that those won't be lost in the long run.
Okay. And any other issues you think with just anticipation of what happens in Washington? Anything else you think? I mean, is there certain capital improvements that obviously there's always grants for big capital improvement projects, but you mentioned in the first part of the show flood control and stormwater damage. I know that's historically the cities or districts have relied upon. I'm sure you're revisiting all those too.
Oh yes. In fact, a couple of years ago, Congressman Swalwell was able to gain a significant, over $1 million funding for Pleasanton's water system to address the PFAS issue. So there's uncertainty around that as well. It all depends on the budget, the outcome of the budget legislation that will be coming out of DC. There are grants, like I mentioned, West Las Positas reconstruction depends on a grant, but that's through the county, Alameda County Transportation Commission. So that won't be affected, cross my fingers, by any federal concerns, but at the same time, we don't want to lose that by not funding it appropriately.
All right, Chef, thank you so much. I know this is a topic we'll probably be talking about for several years. But
yeah.
All right. But let's talk about something more California-centric, and that's Assembly Bill 413, which is California's new daylighting law. Well, tell us a little bit about it. What is it? And then we'll talk about what Pleasanton is doing to implement it.
Okay. That term daylighting was a new one to me as far as how this law gets implemented. So that's referring to sight lines at intersections, for pedestrian safety, driver safety, like seniors, people with disabilities as well. It's to allow people to see each other, drivers and pedestrians. So it prohibits parking within 20 feet of crosswalks at intersections. And the law says marked or unmarked. So people, I guess, would need to be aware where there's an unmarked crosswalk, but definitely for marked crosswalks. So in Pleasanton, our staff has been proactive in making changes at the most highly impacted locations, which is downtown and around schools. Not implementing it necessarily citywide at the current moment, but focusing on those areas. For example, in downtown, there were 2 locations where parking stalls were closer than 20 feet to the intersection. So our sign shop crew, I don't know how many people know that Pleasanton has its own sign shop and makes its own signs, but they removed those stalls and they painted the curbs red to comply with the law. Around schools, we already have red markings near the crosswalks, so those are in compliance largely. And as far as residential neighborhoods go, right now we're not actively marking the curbs near those areas, but the higher pedestrian volumes downtown around schools have the most impact. So that's where we're looking right now. But the city will continue to monitor pedestrian safety and intersection safety if further adjustments may need to be made. So balancing.
No, I have a question.
Yeah.
Does it also apply to landscaping? If there's a big hedge at the corner between the sidewalk and the curb, is that also impacted?
That's a good question.
And I don't know if you know the answer. I was just thinking to myself that yeah, a car can block a view, but sometimes you see a big hedge and you can't see what's on the other side of it.
This is true, yeah. In downtown and around schools, in Pleasanton at least, that does not seem to be the case, but I know what you're saying. The law, as far as I know, applies only to vehicles and the curbs, crosswalks, as opposed to also taking into account shrubs and bushes. Okay. So, well, it'd be a good idea for whoever owns those, though, to cut them back just in the interest of safety.
Well, right. No, there are places where I've noticed just driving around town where you have near a crosswalk or near a park where you just have whether it's a overgrown bush or a tree that overhang, with branches overhanging it. Sometimes it's difficult to see what's on, what's coming up on the other side.
Yeah. And whenever people see those, they can report them on the city website. The city website has a handy page where you can go to and report things like that, and those items get logged and they get followed up on, usually very quickly. I myself reported something one time, and the next day it was taken care of. So, yeah, people don't just look at them, but go on the website and report them.
Well, now that you say you started off saying you didn't know it was called the daylighting, now it makes me wonder too why it was called daylighting. It should be better visibility, right?
Yeah, that's a more appropriate term, I think.
Okay. All right. Anything more on the new daylighting law?
Just balancing safety and parking needs and character of neighborhoods. Those are, the juggling act that is being performed.
All right, Jeff. It's springtime, and there's always great things happening in Pleasanton all year round, but springtime and the summer especially. Yeah. So let's highlight some upcoming events for our viewers that I'm sure they're all will be excited to hear about.
Okay, sure. Of course, later in the summer, whenever Wayside Park has its improvements completed, summer concerts in the park will be restarting. But coming up next is the cultural celebration, the Asian American Pacific Heritage Month. And of course, the city has been having cultural celebrations to celebrate various months like this, and this one is no exception. There will be live music and dance. There will be martial arts demonstrations and arts and crafts for everyone in the family to enjoy. At this cultural arts celebration, you can, for example, see a Filipino dance celebration, a hula performance, martial arts in both the Filipino and Hawaiian styles. I don't know if anyone knew there was a Hawaiian style. My son happens to be a black belt in the Hawaiian style. And also a Bollywood style dance performance.
That's cool.
And a dance along, so audience can dance along to it. So that's going to be at the Firehouse Arts Center on Saturday, May 17th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. As I mentioned, those cultural celebrations have become very popular.
Yeah.
And also save the date for the next one, which is Pleasanton's Juneteenth celebration. The celebration will be on Saturday, June 14th from 11 to 1, and that's also at the Firehouse Arts Center.
Wow, so the Firehouse is getting really busy here with a lot of these cultural arts celebrations.
Yeah. People should take a look at everything that is presented at the Firehouse Arts Center by going online and looking. A lot of things don't get the publicity that they should, but there's always a lot going on.
Well, yeah, and I actually do subscribe, and I do because I look for certain little concerts. Truth be told, I'm a fan of the Bee Gees, and there was a cover band that was there, I think, last month, and I couldn't make it, but I'm hoping it comes back. And it's at the Firehouse.
Yeah. Some performances do come back, especially ones that feature local artists. I can think of several.
And they're popular.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff, thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, my pleasure, Splendid.
And thank you for watching this edition of the Mayor's Report for Pleasanton. Join us for the next episode of the Mayor's Report right here on Tri-Valley TV. I'm Splendorio. Thank you so much for joining us.